So today we will go through a little bit of background to trauma, particularly what could be stress-related disorders that people in our communities suffer because of stress. We will look at what could be some signs and symptoms of trauma or stress, and then some risk factors, some different forms of trauma. We will basically talk about two main ones, and then the third one, which will be actually self-harm or suicide. And then lastly, we will look at how do we manage stress before it actually becomes trauma. So stress is a feeling of emotional or physical tension. It can come from pretty much anything or any event. It could just be a thought that somebody is worried about, and then brings about frustration, anger, and such other negative reactions or emotions that we can call it stress. It is usually temporal. It comes and goes, once in a while. But of course, depending on the cause, if it becomes persistent and takes over some time, then it really now becomes trauma, which is an emotional response to a terrible event, like an accident, maybe a rape or natural disaster. You know that these three things take longer to think about, to worry about, to bother you. An accident, most likely there's injury, takes long to heal. Maybe a rape, every now and then the victim is thinking about the incident. The same to natural disaster. So these are things that develop from stress over time to trauma. And reactions such as shock and denial are really most times typical. You are in shock that maybe you had an accident and broke your leg, for example, or somebody is in shock or is in denial that they had gone through a rape experience. So these are things that over time result in trauma. Psychological or emotional trauma is damage or injury to our minds or our psyche after living through an extremely very difficult, frightening, distressing event. And it may result in challenges in functioning or coping normally after the event. That we call it emotional trauma or psychological trauma. One big example is losing a loved one. Many times, especially depending on the significance of that loved person, it can really throw people into such psychological trauma that can be very difficult to deal with at times, depending on how one copes with it. Any situation that leaves one feeling alone and completely overwhelmed can be traumatic, especially if it is due to a negative thing or a difficult situation that has forced you into being alone. Okay, even if you are not physically harmed, think of a situation where maybe a conflict has broken out and everybody has taken off, and you are hearing gunshots everywhere, and you find yourself all alone. That can be an overwhelming traumatic event that you can go through, even if no bullet has really touched your body at the time. So it's important to remember that it is not the objective facts of the event alone that determine the traumatic magnitude of the event, but also what internally goes through the individual. The subjective emotional experience can also determine the level of trauma somebody goes through. There are these long-lasting and psychological traumatic events, and things that make it worse for people to handle the events. For example, an individual who was not prepared for any event and then it suddenly happens. Again, thinking about loss of a loved one, maybe your breadwinner in the house went to the market and then had an accident and died. This is something nobody prepares for ever. And then it has happened. So unprepared, you don't know now where the bread will come from next. It is usually one thing that makes people prone to developing from stress to trauma and then suffering psychological damage. The event occurred out of the blue. Person felt powerless to prevent the event. This could be in events of sickness, that somebody's loved one is maybe diagnosed with an illness that not even any amount of money can help them. So you begin to feel powerless that you're not able to save this person and they die. So you suffer psychological damage. Again, such things like child abuse, maybe repeated rape, or just repeated harm from maybe people of power. That can become also something that makes us prone to psychological trauma. Maybe the event also involved extreme cruelty, like being beaten up, clobbered, and things like that. The event also may have occurred during the childhood years, like the child abuse. Usually over time, they tend to have issues with their psychological health. So they can develop psychological trauma because they keep thinking about what they really went through. And every negative thing they face in life, they begin to relate it back to the childhood years. If I didn't go through this, I would be like so and so, that kind of, these are some situations that make it difficult to deal with the stress or the trauma, and it often develops into psychological trauma. Examples of events and situations that lead to development of psychological trauma are many. We mentioned the natural disasters in the previous slide. These could be fires, could be earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, not so common in the African region especially, but COVID-19, as we know, at least 2-3 years ago, has had its toll on people's health and minds and so on. So these are examples of situations that can lead to psychological trauma. Interpersonal violence, of course, is one very, very common thing we see around. It often involves rape, child abuse, suicide, or death of a loved one. It could be interpersonal violence, and then involvement in a serious car accident, or even workplace accident, or even accident at home that can be serious enough. This can also be an example of a source of psychological trauma. Acts of violence such as armed robbery, war, or terrorism, especially in this country, South Sudan, they are very common, I think so. Some of us may have even gone through some of such experiences. So if you have come out of them, well and good, right? But there are those who end up getting psychologically traumatized and they really don't function as normally as they should. So there can be many other examples of things you can really think about that lead to development of psychological trauma. And then there are these others that not many people think of them as psychologically really potentially traumatic, yet they are really. For example, a breakup or divorce in a significant relationship. This could be a marriage relationship already. Two people had put their lives together and they had thought for a lifetime they would be together, and then something else happens and that relationship has to end. That is quite a significant relationship whose ending will not be going well with the people and with the individuals particularly. It could result in psychological trauma, unfortunately, maybe due to some cultures and the ways we take things. We tend to think, that's a simple thing. Even if they are broken up, it's okay, life goes on. You don't know exactly what that individual will go through after the breakup. We tend to just overlook this. Significantly humiliating experience could be in a public or somebody's status in the community, somebody who has been highly regarded, in the community, and then all of a sudden something happens that really humiliates their status and their person. This can be also something difficult for some people over time. Surgery, yes, is a source of stress by itself. Recovering from a surgical procedure often takes some time. And people who manage or support individuals who have gone through surgery should understand that sometimes it can cause psychological trauma, and so we need to give them as much support as possible. Falls or injuries due to sports, similar to the surgery experience. Of course, we've talked a lot about the death of a loved one. And then, for example, diagnosis of a life-threatening or disabling condition. Things like, a disease diagnosed in you or in me that we know will lead to maybe blindness. There's nothing somebody can do about it. That is a disabling condition. You become blind, you are disabled, you depend on other people. This can be difficult to also deal with for some people. And then loss of job, even some people think if they lose their job today, they don't mind because they have this huge CV or these many years of experience. they tend to play around. My dear, it's not just as easy. A loss of a job, if not well handled, and if somebody doesn't get a new job soon, especially if they're the breadwinner, is a very, very common likely cause of psychological trauma. Okay, that background to stress and trauma, the different events that make it more difficult for people to overcome, the different events that we tend to overlook, should bring us to understanding what signs and symptoms of this trauma could be. This is helpful, even if you're not a medical personnel, because if you're able to identify in the community or in your family some of these signs and symptoms, then you should be able to intervene and maybe provide help. So the signs and symptoms are grouped into 4. We have these cognitive, which are basically to do with one's mind, consciousness, and maybe unconscious mind. And then behavioral, we will also look at others in the next slide. So for the cognitive, thoughts of the event that may occur out of the blue. You get those thoughts over and over. Somebody gets those thoughts over and over. Maybe somebody's trying to do something, and then those thoughts cross their mind and they lose the focus for what they are doing. You find them staring into the blank, for example. These are things you should be worried, especially if you know somebody has gone through a certain potentially psychologically traumatic event. Okay. Nightmares, yes. During sleep, you get them maybe waking up, maybe shouting, crying, and stuff like that. Visual images of the event. Some of them lose memory and concentration. They become disoriented. It's 1 p.m. They can come and ask you, hey, good morning. Or maybe even in the evening, late evening hours, they can ask you, good morning. They are disoriented to things like time. Or they know I am Leju, they might call me Bida, and they are serious about that name. It's not a slip of a tongue. So these are some signs of trauma that somebody may have gone through an event, and they are really already affecting their mind. In terms of behavior, people who are going through traumatic experiences become sometimes avoidant of activities or places that they know if they go to, they begin to remember what they have gone through. Okay. For example, if the experience was maybe an accident at a roadside or maybe a certain junction, people might decide to not go that direction again. If there's a way to bypass that junction, they want to bypass it. They avoid it because when they pass by, they will remember the accident again and they feel bad, Social isolation and withdrawal can be common. This you can easily identify from family members, close friends. They begin to stay away from other people. They prefer alone time by themselves and so on. This can be a sign that remembering that somebody has gone through an experience, you should be able to try and check with them if they are really fine, okay? Of course, lack of interest in previously enjoyable activities. Many things that people enjoy and you might know. Things like maybe going out and then maybe, for example, if a rape victim suffered the rape experience after going out to a club, definitely you will find that over a few times in the future, they might not want to go to a club again. So they lose interest in that. Physically, some of the things that you can find that may not be very, very medical could be things like extreme alertness. Somebody's always on the lookout for something, a slight sound from somewhere, they overreact to the sound of that, maybe whatever has happened. So they are extremely alert and always looking out for warnings of potential danger. For example, if somebody suffered the trauma from an armed conflict, and then you hear a bang somewhere, which could just be an iron sheet bang, somebody might interpret it as a gunshot, and then they start looking around, okay? So they are extremely alert. And then things to do with the loss of sleep or poor sleep patterns, and maybe poor eating habits. These are very basic things that we can be able to identify as results of trauma that somebody is going through, especially in the physical sense. Psychologically, people are overwhelmed with the fear. they tend to have shame. For example, a rape victim will have shame in coming close to her friends again, or maybe accomplices that they have been around in the town or village. They can fear that, they can have that shame. They can also detach from other people and emotions, similar to the isolation that we saw in the behavioral, the other slide. Okay, one very dangerous psychological sign or symptom of this trauma is depression and suicide. We will look at these two in the upcoming slides. Of course, somebody can be irritable, they are easily angered, they are rude. Just sudden changes of somebody you used to know was very lively, humble, and approachable. All of a sudden is now a very different person. But they have gone through a certain event, a certain traumatic event. Think of this as a result of that and try to be able to know how to handle them. Factors that put us at risk for trauma could be environment. Most of them are environmental, of course. Things like being neglected socially, our lower socioeconomic status. We tend to really put that so much in our minds. There are people who, because they have not so much money, or maybe cost of living has really gone so high, they are not able to afford those things. They can really lose their mind and they become traumatized. Okay. War, of course, is very common. Murder, death of loved one, marital challenges or problems. These are all things around us that can most of the time put us at risk of trauma and stress. For some people, they can inherit things from parents, okay? And mostly that is common with the female sex. Women are more of, they can actually inherit genetically factors that put them at risk of trauma, okay? Some people, when you say something bad about them, even if it is really the truth or you are joking, they take it negatively, okay? And so they don't want to hear such negative appraisals of themselves, okay? And then people who have gone through a stressful or traumatic event and have not been able to be guided according to how to cope with this stress or with the trauma. Such people can also, this can also be a risk that somebody was not guided on how to overcome things easily. Of course, one very common risk factor we see in the communities around is substance abuse. In this country, the most common is alcohol. In other countries, of course, other drugs of abuse like cocaine and many others that easily put people through traumatic experiences. Physical harm definitely is one we have talked about in previous slides. All right. I did mention that we will highlight some forms of trauma and stressor-related disorders. These other four, I will not discuss them in this call. They are not so common. Some of them, like these first two, are more of childhood events that often as children grow up, they even disappear and they overcome them. Adjustment disorder, acute stress disorder are very short-lived. They tend not to have a lot of issues, especially if people get to overcome or change of environment or relations that are positive, they tend to overcome those two. However, for post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and depression, or sometimes called major depressive disorder, and then self-harm, we will discuss these a little more into some few details that I think might be very relevant for our situation. So we will start with the PTSD. If you can't really call every one of the four letters, just call it PTSD. Is the development of characteristic symptoms following exposure to one or more traumatic events, which can be any of these listed events. Any of these, whether it is war or physical assault, sexual violence, being kidnapped or terrorist attack, a burglary that you have been able to witness and stuff like that. Any of these events can really predispose somebody, can put somebody at the risk of developing PTSD, okay? Now, PTSD, the thing is that in PTSD, somebody continuously re-experiences the event in various ways, okay? A common re-experiencing symptom is distressing dreams. So let's talk of a burglary where people have broken into your house maybe at night, and then they found you there and they are already ordering you left and right, maybe beating you and stuff like that, very common in the city dwellings, okay? So if that is the event that has resulted in PTSD, one common thing is such people re-experience that experience actually. They re-experience the moment, the event, through distressing dreams. They can even wake up and they are looking around. They have been dreaming that, again, the people might have come back, you know. So that such re-experiencing distressing dreams tend to usually set in within the first 3 months. So we are now in July, something that has happened maybe from around March this year, and this time still somebody is thinking about it and dreaming badly about it and all that. That could be a sign that somebody is already in PTSD, okay? So these are often referred to as flashbacks. So it's a flash of a memory, a past event, not happening now, but it has just flashed in your mind as a new thing, as a present thing, okay? So they are typically brief, and they can also be associated with prolonged distress, okay? However, the good thing with these PTSD is that about half of adult people who have gone through it recover in 3 months' time, although others will still continue for about a year plus, okay? So that is PTSD. There must be an event, traumatic event, about 3 months ago. It keeps coming back in the person's minds in form of maybe dreams or in form of just flashbacks that are sudden, and you know, you relive the experience. That is PTSD, and it often resolves in about 3 months' time. The other side, depression, which also is known as the major depressive disorder, MDD, can be defined as a period of at least 2 weeks during which there is either a depressed mood or the loss of interest or pleasure in nearly all activities. And the mood may, on the other side, also be irritable rather than a sad one. Somebody looks like depressed, like they don't want to interact, they are just by themselves. But when you try to even greet them, hello, good morning, or good afternoon, they can respond to you in a very rude way, okay? They are irritable, that's what it means. So this could be something that has happened over 2 weeks, in a period of 2 weeks, at least 2 weeks or more. So you've been observing this person, usually a very kind girl or lady, you know, soft-spoken and so on, went through a certain experience. Let me say, for example, an end of a relationship or a marriage. And then you have seen that for 2 weeks now, she doesn't communicate, she doesn't speak, gets up in the morning, maybe is just seated there and so on. You try to greet them, they are rude, they shout back, they don't bother me, that kind of thing. That irritability, if somebody is already experiencing such things for about 2 weeks or more, and you know they have gone through a certain traumatic event, think that this person might be having depression. Okay, so the individual must also experience at least 4 additional symptoms drawn from a list. What are these? Could be changes in appetite or weight. People who are depressed, it depends on, varies from individual to another. Some of them can have hyper increased appetite, like more appetite than you've ever seen them having. So they can eat and eat and eat a lot and they gain weight. Others will have the opposite, less interest for food, and then so you see them losing weight. So there can be changes in appetite or body weight. Of course, sleep changes. People who used to maybe go to bed at 10 p.m., you find them staying up until 1 a.m. and they are still not asleep. Or they can go in at 10 a.m. and still they don't find sleep, or they sleep for an hour and they are up again and sleep has left them. So patterns of sleep changing, psychomotor activity, what they used to do in a very controlled manner might be less focused now. Like if they used to hold a phone very firmly and and correctly and so on, and maybe putting there, you find them maybe having difficulty with such, again, simple basic things. So again, they might have decreased energy, okay, could have come from maybe less eating or just lack of interest to do things, and they look like they have decreased energy. Feelings of worthlessness or guilt, very common. Depressed people will always tell you their lives are now useless. There is even no need to live, okay? They are feeling worthless or they feel guilty, okay? Somebody's maybe relationship or marriage has ended. Even when they were not the ones on the wrong, they will be like, oh, I think I should have done better, you know? So they are blaming themselves. They may also have difficulty in thinking, concentrating, or making decisions. And they may also have recurrent thoughts of death or suicidal ideation. Or even they can plan or attempt suicide at the same time. These are the people who really feel worthlessness and guilt. Most times, this is a common, indicator that somebody might progress to thinking about suicide or even planning it, or at times attempting it, okay? And when they attempt, of course, unless somebody catches them, they might actually kill themselves. Individuals may also report feeling less interested in hobbies, or they are not caring anymore. Somebody who used to, check on you, pass by, say hi and all this, but no longer does that. So they are no longer caring, right? This could be some sign of depression. Again, remember that you should know that somebody has gone through a traumatic event in the recent past. Sleep disturbance may take the form of either difficulty or sleeping excessively again. These ones who would go at 10, now going at 1 a.m., or the one who would usually go to bed at 11 p.m. or midnight, now going to bed at 8 p.m., for example. So it is either side, not always one direction, okay? Decreased energy, tiredness, and fatigue are common. Without really, you don't see that somebody has done a lot of exhaustive work during the day, but they are very, very tired. So these are some signs you can see for depression. Again, it depends on the history that somebody has gone through, a traumatic event, and then now you are observing changes in how they do their things, how they communicate, how they interact, and then you see how they change in body and stuff like that. You're able to say, oh, okay, this has continued for the last 3 weeks, for example. I think so-and-so is becoming depressed, okay? So if you identify such a person, what should you do? Try to reach out to them, try to, sit down with them, give them audience. Many times they will begin to understand or, begin to feel worthy of themselves again and begin to think there is possibly another reason to live again instead of taking us here, which is deliberate self-harm. Sometimes we call it suicide. And while I was looking through my slides for last year's presentation, I couldn't change this. I know this was a year ago, but still a very painful experience somebody went through due to suicide. This was a Facebook post that I came across when I was preparing my slides on suicide, and I thought it was helpful that time. I must admit, for the last 1 year since I made this presentation, I don't remember hearing of any suicide case. If somebody here in this call now has heard any other suicide recently, maybe they can share their experience, but at least within South Sudan, I have not had any more suicide cases. There used to be very many and rampant. I think 2022, maybe about 4, 5, 6 cases of people, youth for that matter, who had taken their lives, And this next picture here shows to you some of the many things that could add up to suicide, the death, depression, hopelessness, despair, stress, and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. So all these could add up to suicide, as we shall see. So suicide is the intentional taking of one's own life. Simple as that. You intend to kill yourself and you do, and you kill yourself. That is suicide. Although there are a few different views on suicide, others think that it is not good because God does not allow killing. The commandments say, "Thou shalt not kill," and you are still there killing yourself, for example. Could it be bad that suicide is an offense to God? Others say it could be justifiable because somebody feels they are very mistaken, or maybe they feel they are a failure, so they could really be protesting such kind of misachievements or underachievements in life. Expression of despair, wish to escape rather than genuine intention to die. And this is the most common. People who kill themselves often leave behind a note, and most of the notes that are left behind, you see, there's finger pointing at so and so, and then maybe they claim that, I think I've done my part, whatever is left, this and that. So they tend to think life has overwhelmed them so much that they can no longer handle, right? So it's not really because they thought they should kill themselves, but because things around have not been so easy. It is often associated with the psychological factors, okay, like mood disorders, substance abuse. Really, with the substances, killing oneself is much easier, especially alcohol abuse. People who are drunk, and for those in this call who actually drink, we should have experienced the drunkenness, mood. Almost everything is quick and easy to be done, whether it is to kill somebody or yourself, or to fight, or decide to be happy. Things like that are often very easy when somebody is high on any substance. So it is associated with such things. Of course, they cry for help or attention. For some people who mostly attempt, but they don't end up killing themselves, most of the thing is that they just want attention. They just want more help. We've seen some people climbing aerials or communication masts, whether it is for MTN or Zain or whatever. That is, and then they don't end up even throwing themselves down, but you see people gather, others send, they send information and say, if you want me to come down, please call for me, the governor, for example. They want attention. Others also think it could be just committed as part of crime, okay? So you've done away with something really bad, then you kill yourself, part of crime. So most people who attempt suicide do not complete it on the first attempt. This is, to some extent, good news for us, because we want to try to help people prevent killing themselves, okay? Whether it is a personal right to die, I will leave it at that for those who really want to indulge in these debates on whether it is good to kill oneself or it is one's right. But in the West, especially, there is the concept of euthanasia. Euthanasia is somebody really signing up to say, where I have reached with this sickness, let me go. And then medical personnel will help this person to go in peace. It's different than this self-killing in form of suicide often. So attempted suicide is just the act of self-injury that is cautiously aimed at killing oneself, okay? But then at the end of the day, the killing doesn't end up happening. Maybe because they changed their minds, or maybe because somebody who knows that they are intending to kill themselves comes in and intervenes. Some of them want to take overdose of medications, and then immediately somebody says that and they come and grab it away. That's an attempted suicide, okay? On the opposite is the completed suicide. Here there is fatality, there is death, okay? And it is said to be more common in men than in women, as opposed to attempts. Attempts are more common in women than men. Completed suicides are more common in men than in women. So men tend to have, more intention to kill, and they really do. When they decide to kill themselves, they do, okay? In terms of murder-suicide, this is a suicide that is meant to facilitate murder, okay, or escape punishment as a self-punishment, or to avoid children becoming orphans, to be together in the afterlife, So they kill them first, and then they kill themselves. These are common, especially with the soldiers, especially in South Sudan. We've heard of maybe soldiers who got angry or got overwhelmed by emotions of death, and then they just shoot everybody, and then they shoot themselves on top. That's called murder-suicide, okay? what are some of the risk factors for suicide? There's this acronym, SAD persons, okay? And it's given there in full. Sex, and the most common is female. Females tend to attempt suicide more than men. I just said that a few moments ago. And so suicide cases are more common with the women than men. Age of 10 to 24, some sources say up to 39 are the most common attempters of suicide. And then, of course, greater than 60. Some of these elderly people, their stress is more from really loneliness, maybe life circumstances that are now difficult to live in. They tend to think about that. And some of these younger people, their issues are really the lack of experience in life and still very little understanding of life and how to deal with these situations in life and so on. They tend to go that direction of suicide. Of course, depression, I discussed that prior to this slide. Previous history, somebody who had previously attempted to kill themselves, if you don't take good care of this person, they are more likely to repeat attempting suicide. And most times when it is now repeated, it is well planned and it ends up happening. So somebody really kills themselves. Ethanol is basically alcohol. So abuse of alcohol, I talked about that. Rational thinking loss. Somebody who has really been faced by a very difficult situation. They have tried to think through how to overcome. And then they end up just concluding that no, up to this extent, the best is let me go. And then they kill themselves. Of course, the breadwinner loss situation. So the support system is lost. Okay. And this is again mostly common with the women who have lost their husbands, and the husband was pretty much everything in the house in terms of support for her and children, and now the husband has died, for example. Organized plan, so this is suicide pact or murder suicide. This is what I just explained. So that becomes an organized plan to kill others and oneself. So it's a risk factor. No spouse, no significant other. This is now this age group mostly. Okay, so they feel worthless in their lives. They don't have a spouse. They don't think there's anything meaningful for them in this life. And lastly, chronic sicknesses. Chronic sicknesses, especially those that require, again, chronic care or expensive care. And then people will be like, no, it's better I go. And then they kill themselves. This is a bit different from the euthanasia I talked about a few moments ago. But I want to also say that in this chronic sickness, some of these chronic sicknesses that people kill themselves for are not necessarily really as bad as they thought they are. For example, if you hear that somebody has committed suicide because they were diagnosed with HIV, in this modern world, that's really very painful, because the HIV that people now carry because of the treatment they get and so on, there should be no reason somebody kills themselves because of this. But yes, it is a chronic infection. It means somebody will have to stay on treatment for life. Okay, just to put perspective on magnitude of suicide, a study in 2019 across 59 countries in the low and middle income status, over 229,000 adolescents were studied across 6 regions in the world. And then they found that overall, the prevalence of suicidal ideation was about 17%. Suicidal ideation is simply thinking about killing oneself. You are contemplating, that is ideation. You are carrying the ideas in your mind that, hey, you should kill yourself. So out of that number of adolescents, about 17% had thought of killing themselves the previous year, okay? And then 17%, again, 17.0% to be precise, had actually planned to kill themselves. And another 17.0% had attempted to kill themselves 12 months before the study. So, of course, adolescent age, we are talking about, say, 12 to 19, 13 to 19-year-olds, okay? And you see that a huge number, close to 20% of them either planning or attempting to kill themselves. That's close to 1 in 5, okay? So that's how common it is in that young age group of people. In Africa, The highest rates of suicidal ideation and planning at 20% and 23%. These are the highest rates of ideas and plans for suicide. In the whole 59 countries, Africa had the highest rate of thinking about suicide or planning it. And then the Pacific region really had the actual attempting. It was the highest rate in the study. So the Pacific region had the highest attempts, 20.5% of all that. Interestingly, like I said, girls had higher prevalence of ideation, planning, and attempting than the boys, okay? Also, in terms of age, 15 to 17 had more attempts than the younger ones of 13 to 14-year-olds. So these things really live with us. And as we have seen, adolescents are so much at risk of suicide. Another study in 2018, looking at the most common ways people commit suicide, hanging was the most common that was found to be used as a way to kill oneself, followed by poisoning, mostly using pesticides. These are chemicals that often are used for spraying crops so that whatever animals are destroying the crops will not destroy them again. Many times they are kept in the houses, not so well secured, and people can easily grab and drink them. They are very poisonous. Okay, so poisoning became the second common way, and then lastly, use of firearms. So these were the most common three ways people committed suicide. And again, in terms of the related psychiatric diseases, depression came in, substance use, and other psychological illnesses that we term them together as psychosis. So that was also another study to help us understand a little more on suicide. So what happens when somebody commits suicide? Of course, it affects others. It could be their spouse, parents, children, siblings, neighbors, friends, relatives, everybody really is affected by any form of suicide that happens, okay? It also means that suicide may occur in the future by others, okay? Because people will see that, hey, so if you are overwhelmed by life, you can just go the way you want. And then they will also put that as a plan, maybe plan C or plan D, in terms of trying to help themselves in life, okay? Economic importance on family, nation, health system definitely cannot be overemphasized. I have talked about the family level, especially in the national level. Of course, when you look at younger people killing themselves, these are the people who should be building the economy and the country and so on. So it's not healthy. It's not good for the country as well. The legal implications, for example, in a murder-suicide case, can have its legal implications, or usually these ones who kill themselves and maybe leave behind a note, that note might become of legal implications, depending on what is written on it. So the impact of suicide on all of us is huge, and if there's something we can do about it, let's do it. Let's not harm ourselves, and let's help prevent others not to harm themselves as well. So this leads me to how we can assess and manage for suicide, or rather manage suicide. If it is in the health facility, of course, asking every patient about suicidal ideation is good. There's what we call history taking in the medical field. Any sickness really should be about, somebody should be asked questions, meaningful questions that can help with the diagnosis. If somebody's symptoms or signs or complaints they have come with relate to the minds, somebody looking at that client, a patient should be able to think suicidal ideations and ask them if they have ever thought about killing themselves, okay? It's not a problem. It does not mean somebody is now going to kill themselves, but it will help us to support that person better. Of course, if they say yes, let's understand what could be the cause, what are the real issues, and also be able to think, will this person still keep thinking of this tomorrow and the next month and the next year? So the future risk of ideations and maybe even ending up attempting it, okay? So whatever the cause of these suicidal ideations or attempts is, we should mostly treat that cause or respond to it. It may not be something that needs a medicine. It might be something that needs a solution. If we can find a solution, much better, okay? But where the situation is so bad, it's good to admit the person, because then the chances of suicide are reduced. And then if that person is admitted, the only time we should discharge them is when they no longer feel suicidal, okay? Or they are medically better, they can understand life better than they came in. If it was due to drugs, they are less intoxicated now, okay? And they are willing to come back for more support in the next appointment you give them. That way we can be able to discharge such a person. Of course, anybody who has had ideas for suicide or attempting it needs continuous psychological support or psychosocial support, from immediate family to friends to the psychologist to even maybe organizations or charity bodies that are willing to support such people. We should be able to link such people to this kind of support, because then they will be able to cope better and also give a lot of meaning to their lives. Stress management techniques, of course, we will look at that in the upcoming slides, about 7 ways that can be very, very easy to do at home and still helpful to release stress. But keeping harmful objects away is one immediate action somebody should think about. For example, if somebody carries a pistol on them or they keep it in the house and you've seen that they have attempted suicide, then that is the first thing one should keep away from this person. Maybe they will think of a rope, the next thing hanging or whatever, but at least whatever harmful objects you know should be kept away. Engaging people who have survived suicide in economic activities, okay? This will give them more reason to live until the next day at least. And if their source of ideas for suicide was maybe economic hardships, and then now begin to make a few pounds here and there, definitely they will begin to forget that idea or plan of taking their lives. Regulation of and keeping away from suicidal items and methods. This could be government policies or regulations or local government regulations, maybe about drinking hours or maybe the age of people to be seen in drinking joints and stuff like that. This kind of regulations could also help minimize issues of suicide. Okay, I still found this one nice. 44% of dog owners would rather turn to their dog for emotional support than talk about their feelings with a family member, according to a 2019 study. Very interesting. Maybe that's why most people, especially in the West, they keep pets, you know, and most of the pets are, I think, dogs. So if 44% of the owners would rather turn to their dog, just know we have a lot as human beings to do in terms of how we support each other, how we respond to our colleagues who may not be doing well. All right. So we've looked at stress, trauma, we've looked at the different forms of trauma, psychological trauma-related things. We looked at depression, we looked at PTSD, we have looked at suicide. How do we manage any form of stress even before it leads us to psychological trauma? Like I said, I will discuss these 7 things in blue. The other three in black are more of maybe things that require a skilled or trained person and stuff like that. We will not go for them. But these other 7 that I will take you through are basic stress management strategies or exercises that we can do at home, and we should be able to learn them and even teach other people, because they have been scientifically proven to help with managing stress. See, the thing is that when one manages stress, especially immediately, then one is not going to progress into trauma, and the mental and the psychological or mental trauma will not come in. Therefore, we will not be talking about depression, PTSD, and things like suicide. Okay, so let's go one at a time. Now, there's this PMR kind of exercising, or progressive muscle relaxation. Is a technique for reducing stress and anxiety by alternately tensing for 10 seconds and then relaxing for 20 seconds. The muscle groups over the legs, abdomen, chest, arms, and face in a sequential order with the eyes closed. So it's a sequence. If you want to begin with maybe muscles of your face, you can start with the face, you close your eyes, you tense the muscles for 10 seconds, and then you relax them for 20 seconds. Okay, so tensing muscles, a muscle can become tense, especially when it is stretched, okay, or if it is forced to come together again to contract, it can become a little bit tensed. But now when you release that tension, it relaxes. So you can start from maybe the face, you go to the chest, to the arms, maybe to the legs, to the abdomen. When you lie down, you can do that for the abdomen, especially you can tense them. But for example, you will focus on the distinction between the feelings of the tension and relaxation. So when the muscle is tense, there's a certain feeling you get. When you relax it, there's also another different feeling you get. You are stressed, of course, you first identify that now I'm feeling stressed. For example, what is your stress? Maybe you broke up with your girlfriend on Friday, the day before yesterday, right? And you are stressed because this is somebody you had hoped to marry and all that and all that. Now you are stressed, but you want to relieve the stress and you want to use this method. So for example, if you want to focus on your arms, your arm muscles, group of muscles. So there is this muscle group, there is that muscle group. When I put my arm out like that, this muscle group here is tense because I have stretched. I have stretched the muscle group. This muscle group is tense. So what do I feel here with these muscles? So I'm closing my eyes and I'm focusing on the feeling I get here for 10 seconds. And then I will relax these muscles by bringing back my arm so that they are, instead of being tense or pulled apart, they are together. And then the feeling changes. So I also focus on this feeling with the closed eyes for about 20 seconds. Okay. And then I switch to maybe another different muscle groups. So this is what they call progressive muscle relaxation method or exercising. So you keep doing that. You are focusing on the feeling. When the muscle is stretched, what do you feel? When it is relaxed, what do you feel? 10 seconds of stretch or tension, 20 seconds of relaxation, and you are just focusing on that, closing your eyes. Your mind, you play about with your mind and your mind is forgetting whatever happened on Friday. Okay, so that's how you do that. With the practice, of course, the patient will learn how to effectively relax in a short period of time. So instead of 10, 20 seconds, when you now do that more often and every day, you begin to understand, and you can even do it very fast. And then once your attention focuses on the feelings and feelings across all the muscle groups and all these, you lie in bed, you tense the abdomen, you relax it and you focus on it and so on. Then you will wake up and maybe your mind is thinking of, oh, it's time to join this call. And then you want to log in and you join. And then you get used to other things. And then the feeling of a breakup, for example, begins to disappear. That's how this method is used to try to reduce or minimize stressful feelings. The second one that we are discussing is called autogenic training. Anything auto, as we might know, is self-happening, self-doing, okay? So this is self-training, if you like, is a self-relaxation procedure by which a psycho refers to the mind, physiological is body function. So a mind and body function relaxation is determined, okay, and elicited. So you learn a set of directions or exercises that command the body to relax and control breathing, blood pressure, heartbeat, and body temperature. So how you do that is usually in a quiet place. You lie flat on your back, and then you exercise. How do you do it? There are about 6 standard exercises. Repetition, just repetition of these exercises is what happens, right? With the use of visual imagination and verbal cues. Make the body feel warm, heavy, and relaxed. Those are some of the things. So useful in a range of disorders. For example, if you have a migraine headache or any kind of headache, you can do this. Or people who have high blood pressure or a heart disease, this can help them because it generates a coordination, a relaxation that is coordinated between the mind and the whole body function, right? So how do you do this? For example, you are lying flat, quiet place, then you take in slow breaths. As you do that, you are quietly speaking to yourself and you are telling yourself, I am completely calm, okay? So you're breathing in slowly and you are telling yourself, your mind, that you are completely calm. Again, these things, we do them when we feel stressed. You don't just do them because they are not exercises for physical fitness. They are exercises for the mind. So you must identify that you are feeling stressed at the moment, okay? Then you go for them. Then after that, slow breaths and reassuring yourself that you are completely calm, you now focus on your arms again. So focus on your arms, just looking at them, and then slowly you repeat to yourself 6 times. My arms are very heavy. I am completely calm. You are lying in bed and just doing that kind of exercise. So you repeat that 6 times. My arms are very heavy. I am completely calm. After finishing with your arms, maybe you now what? Okay, finishing those statements, you now change the statement to something else, still focusing on your arms, right? My arms are very warm. I am completely calm. So this is just like a repetition and repetition of what you do. You can move from the arms to the legs. Talk about your legs being very heavy, but you are very calm, completely calm, right? You can also talk about your legs being very warm, but then again, reassure yourself that you are completely calm. So you started with the breaths, you have moved to the arms 6 times, they are heavy, you are calm. Another 6 times, they are warm, you are calm. Then you move to the legs, focus on them. They are very heavy, but you are completely calm. And then they are very warm, you are completely calm. Then you move to another part of your body and another, as many as you really want. This is what we call the autogenic training, okay? So the mind begins to calm down, breathing calms down, blood pressure calms down, because you are not doing any serious or exhausting kind of activity. You are just speaking to yourself and focusing on your body parts slowly at a time, okay? So those are the 6 standard exercises. I mean, 6 means you say 6 times, whether they are very heavy, but you are completely calm, or they are very warm, you are completely calm. You focus from one body part to another, and so on. Then you will find you are relaxed in maybe 20 minutes time. The stress would have gone away. Your mind can refocus on other things. The third one is relaxation response, as the name simply states, okay? A simple practice that takes about 10 to 20 minutes to learn or do a day to achieve relaxation. This one is similar to the autogenic training. In this one, you are now having a specific word or sound or prayer, or maybe a thought that is good in your mind, okay? Or a phrase or a muscular movement through which your concentration is achieved. Let's think of maybe a sound, okay? Or maybe even a song, okay? So you are repeating that and repeating that phrase or the song or the sound. And then through that concentration, through that repetition, you achieve concentration, okay? That is relaxation response. Now, passive return to the repetition when other thoughts intrude. So as you repeat, you are, of course, calm. You have experienced stress now, but you want to fight it, and you are calm and you're repeating a certain sound, for example. So as you repeat, what happens? Without you thinking about it, okay, then you are now going to be saying those words without you really thinking about it or the sound. But your mind can still be thinking, what we call the subconscious mind can still be thinking what you want to do, not necessarily the stressful thing, but can be focusing on other things, right? So during this, the body moves from a state of physiological arousal to a state of physiological relaxation, like being aroused, alert, ready for any danger. You take the body out of that state to the state of relaxing, because what you're focusing on is some simple sound or maybe a phrase or just a word, but you are trying to repeat it over and over and over, and then the mind will begin to go away from the stressful situation or moment. During stress, of course, we are all aroused because we want to react accordingly, if it means to run or to defend ourselves, okay? So RR can reduce systolic pressure, improve heart function, and also relieve other medical symptoms. That is the importance of relaxation. So the relaxation response, okay? The fourth one that you can also do at home is diaphragmatic breathing. For those who studied science up to maybe a certain level, or biology at least up to senior 4, of course, there is a muscle in our body called diaphragm. That muscle separates the chest from the abdomen, and it usually helps us with the breathing. Okay, so when it relaxes, it falls down and air goes in. When it contracts, it moves up and pushes air out. So we can also use that muscle to help us with the relaxation. Okay, how do you do it? This is how we do it. So you lie flat on your back, say in a bed, with your knees bent and your head supported maybe with a pillow. You can use a pillow under your knees as well, if you like. Place one hand on your upper chest, just around the neck, upper chest, and then the other hand below your rib cage. So where the ribs end and the stomach, that we call stomach here, starts, you put your other hand on it. Okay, so right hand here, for example, left hand, below the rib cage. So this will allow you to what? To feel your diaphragm movement as you breathe. So you breathe in slowly through your nose so that your stomach moves out. We all know that when we breathe in, our stomach bulges, yeah, bulges. So as you do that, of course, your hand that is on the stomach will also move out with your stomach. So the hand on your chest, however, should remain where it is because the chest doesn't move in this case. And then you tighten now your stomach muscle so that your stomach moves in. So again, the hand will also go in with the stomach, causing your hand to lower. That's what I said. And then the hand on your chest remains the same. So as you now tighten the muscles on the stomach wall, it is moving in with your hand, you're breathing out, okay? Diaphragmatic breathing exercise. And then you keep doing that and doing that and doing that. You will feel relaxation. Always, these exercises are good when you do them in a quiet place and you focus on what you are doing. Try to forget whatever is stressing you, focus on what you are doing. So you keep doing that in and out, and then over a few minutes, you begin to feel relaxed. The mind moves away from what was stressing it to what you are now focusing on, which is the exercise. The fifth one that we are looking at is transcendental meditation. Now, the word is heavy for many of us. Don't worry about it. We'll just go to what it is. Okay, so you can do it about twice daily while sitting with your eyes again closed, and you repeat a mantra, a meaningless sequence of sounds specific to each individual to promote a natural shift of awareness to a wakeful but deeply restful state. For example, you can think of any mantra, say maybe, I am a tall man. I am a tall man. You may not be tall, but you want to tune your mind to something to just take away its focus on stress, to focus on what you are saying. Any kind of mantra you want to think about. I am a short man, fine, okay? So you repeat that meaningless kind of thing, and then it is deemed to be responsible for restoration of normal function of various bodily systems, okay? And also, of course, adapting to the environment, okay? So you just sit with your eyes closed, you repeat a mantra. Transcendental, for example, what this person is doing, let me just show you right away how you do it, okay? Sit in a comfortable chair, eyes closed, okay? 30 seconds of quiet. You start with being quiet, closed eyes, 30 seconds, quiet. And then after that, what happens? Ease into the mantra, which can be a meaningless, what they call vibration word. Your teacher may give you one, or you can develop your own. So you repeat it in your head at no particular rhythm. You can say it fast, or slowly, or in between. Nobody should just decide it for you. Close your eyes, and you continue. Don't think about how you're breathing now, in and out. No, you're just focusing on what is in your mind that you are saying, that repeated mantra. Okay. So the mantra will attract your attention, but allow your thoughts to float. Okay. You may experience moments of transcendence, a pleasant feeling of restfulness. After 20 minutes, for example, you can take 3 mantra-free minutes before opening your eyes. So you've done that for 20 minutes. Relax, don't repeat the mantra, keep quiet for about 3 minutes. And then you now open your eyes and get up and go and do other things. If you do this about twice a day, you will be able to overcome stress. That's the transcendental meditation. Sixth one is mindfulness-based stress reduction. Like the name suggests, the reduction, how we reduce stress is based on the mindfulness. Okay. How mindful you are of what you are trying to do. So they link your thinking and its resulting impact on feeling. That is the linkage. What you are thinking and how you think of it impacts on how you feel. Okay. The most common, or rather the easiest thing you might think about, is a yoga exercise. Okay, is a yoga exercise. So here they are employing mindfulness meditation in order to alleviate mental and physical suffering associated with the physical and psychiatric disorders. Okay, so in this technique of mindfulness-based reduction of stress, you are assuming that the greater awareness of the here and now, how you are aware, what you are aware of now and here, the greater awareness of now and here will provide clearer and more accurate perception, reduction of negative affect, and improve energy and coping. That is the assumption. In yoga exercises, you are focusing on maybe a posture, a way of standing, or a way of sitting, or a way of lying down, and you're focusing on it. You are what? You are being aware of the here and now. Okay, so the longer you do that, the assumption is that it will provide a clearer and more accurate understanding, okay, and also reducing negative effects. For example, in this slide, if you want to read more about this slide, you can read in this link here. So this is somebody learning, or rather doing, yoga exercises. When they put like that, they are focusing on their arms being apart. One is pointing up, the other one on the foot, and so on. When they lie like that, and all this, again, quiet place. The biggest point is focusing. What are you trying to put in your mind that should displace the stressful event? So that is those are the yoga exercises which are part of the mindfulness-based stress reduction. The other one is called EFT, emotional freedom technique. As the name suggests, you feel emotionally free instead of stressed. Okay, so instead of feeling stressed, you feel emotionally free. So in this emotional freedom, a person has to tap on some body parts, and those are called acupoints. So you speak aloud a specific meaningful short phrase. So you keep tapping as you keep speaking aloud that specific meaningful short phrase. There are 9 body parts that are designed for that tapping. Okay, you can tap each of them as you say aloud those specific meaningful phrases for a few times. Okay, what are such phrases? For example, you could say things like, even though I feel anxious about work tomorrow, I deeply and completely accept myself. Of course, tomorrow is a Monday, so this might be a good statement for you to start with for those who work on Monday to Friday, right? So you are anxious about tomorrow, maybe it's stressing you, it's a Monday, things like that. And then you want to do this exercise of emotional freedom. So you identify those 9 acupoints, you are tapping on one of them at a time, and then speaking to yourself. Even though you feel anxious about work tomorrow, you deeply and completely accept yourself. Such reassuring statements. You keep repeating and repeating, the mind will begin to feel motivated and will begin to feel like, yeah, let Monday come, nothing will happen. Okay. Or for somebody who broke up, say on Friday night, you could say something like, even though my partner broke up with me, I deeply and completely accept myself. The baseline there is deeply and completely accepting yourself, no matter what has happened. Okay. And then you keep tapping on those points just to stimulate the mind and also to make it focus on what you are doing. So these are actually the 9 acupoints that when you are doing the emotional free or rather freedom technique, okay, emotional freedom technique, you are looking at these 9 acupoints. Could be the side of the palm. So you are tapping there and you broke up on Friday and you are telling yourself, even though your partner broke up with you, you deeply and completely accept yourself. So you are not going to blame yourself for anything. Then you move on to maybe the forehead, somewhere there. You moved on to the inner side of the eyebrows, okay? The outer side of the eye, below the eye, and then below the nose, below the lower lip, okay? And then to somewhere below this collarbone and down to around below the breast, okay? Or in the armpit. So these are 9 different body points that you keep tapping on, and you are repeating that nice motivating statement of yours. Whether there is anxiety, you deeply and completely accept yourself. Okay, there is this other stress, but you still completely and deeply accept yourself. So the mind just gets tuned to positive thinking, positive, 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 and then the stress will just go away. Okay. So those are the main 7 stress management exercises. I believe that they are possible, they are doable at home. You may not have understood each of them all in this session, and you don't need to understand each of them all really, but you can still follow in the YouTube later and watch this and still be able to practice them and learn maybe 3 or 4 of them to deal with some of your stressful situations. Apart from them, I also think that there are these other ways we can manage stress, such as addressing the cause. Most of the stress comes from a known cause. It is not out of the blue. So if we can address those causes, it will be really the best thing, okay? Of course, seeking social company, support, and care is very important. If it is something you really feel is beating you mentally down, always meet a doctor or meet your doctor. There's this common practice these days. People go to Google and begin to ask maybe what causes of this feeling, causes of that feeling, when actually something you're going through is something somebody else could identify it for you and tell you the right way to manage it. Google will tell you a lot of other problems that have similar feeling as you have stated to them, you know. So that's not the best thing to do for most of our health problems. Counseling, of course, is good. You can be the counselor or you can seek counseling if you think really the stress you have needs somebody's way of looking at it. In counseling, usually the person who is providing the counseling helps you to look at the issue in another way, and you might find a solution to the problem. Indulging in job, work, training, such as vocational training, are all very good ways of managing stress, especially if they are becoming longer term and could lead to trauma. You know, you can indulge in doing something, house chores or cooking or going to a friend, you know, or going to just play football, things like that. Identify recovery goals and build hope of reaching them. When you recover, what do you want to achieve? Okay, maybe when you overcome this trauma today, this trauma which has resulted from loss of a breadwinner, maybe you intend to open your own small shop or begin to go to the market and start selling stuff. So what are your recovery goals? This might also help the mind better to improve. Reestablish relationships, be them intimate or otherwise, depending on the cause of this stress again. Yes, people do break up in intimate relationships, and sometimes they do get back. For some people, it works after coming back again. For others, it won't. So it will be good to also, first of all, re-examine what relationships do you want to re-establish. You don't want to re-establish a relationship that will even worsen the situation. And then, of course, we've looked earlier on some of the signs and symptoms. We should be able to monitor them, even not as medical personnel, just as members of the community. We should be able to look out for those signs and symptoms and be able to provide people the necessary support. Mr. Beda, it has been a marathon of talking. I'd like to stop there because that's actually the end of my presentation. What is in the chat box? And if someone has any questions, answers to be given, and or comments. Over to you, Bida.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. It's been really a lot of information, and of course, like getting to
Yeah.
see some of these important tips. Yeah, well done. I hope I'm excusing you to go get
Yeah.
some water. Yeah.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
in the
sure.
comments, there have been a lot of interesting conversations. I see. I see when you asked about someone who has had suicide, somebody is saying earlier this year in suicide cases, we have seen increased due to food cut down by the World Food Program and the United Nations High Commission for Refugees and the Office of the Prime Minister in Uganda. And another one is saying it can be caused by poverty, among others. I really witnessed these atrocities happening, and it's been a nice session. That is an appreciation to you, Dr. Leju. And of course, myself, 2 weeks ago, we have this alumni group for secondary school, and in the group, I saw an update about a student of Yeide Secondary School who actually committed suicide, but I couldn't get what really happened or what were the reasons as to why he killed himself. Yes, Yeka, you want to say something? I see your hand is up.
Yes, yes.
Yes, please.
Thank you so much to Dr. Leju for taking us through. And I have one question so that will able to help us, and they will also help the community. Like really, how can we really identify such a person that we want to commit suicide? Like for us in here, he said he have reduced in Juba, but in here have not reduced. The last 2 weeks of June and the couple to the first week of July, there are so many cases of suicide. Much as there's a group of people whom we trust them to sit, they look at the modality, and we are waiting. We will feed Leju. We are waiting the results because they went to the police to find out the data. I mean the number that have committed suicide in these 3 weeks, so that actually will be shared. This is what we are going to do, even including the foreigners. One foreigner found in a house where he has a saloon found dead. See, by committing suicide. In the same time again, another person in Gemtel commit suicide. It started by a woman in Nyongbe. So here, actually, the issue of suicide is rampant. It's becoming more higher, and we don't know the cost. But if this training can ever help us identifying the people, what mechanisms can we do to do awareness so that we reduce the issue of the suicide is better. Thank you. Thank you, Bida.
Yes, thank you so much, Yeka. And I see a hand from Taban Benai. I hope that's how your name is pronounced anyway. Yes, your question, please.
Yes, thank you. I would like to start with some comments. The presentation is really very good. We have really benefited, especially me. I'm working in the same field. I've got a lot of new information. So it is good that this will help us also to continue passing the same message to the community so that we can contribute in reducing suicide. So I would like to actually respond on the point Dr. Leju said about the number of suicide in Juba. Last year it was rampant, but this year it was not there. But I think it has reduced in Juba. But outside Juba, it is still really a serious issue. Last month I came from Wow because that's my duty station. I work there in the field of mental health. The cases are still there. Even last year, and even some weeks ago, I also came from Malakal. These are really hot spots for suicide. And then I came to here 3 weeks ago. As of the beginning of this month, actually, this month of July, there are about 5 cases of suicide, 4 completed, and then 1 attempt. So this one still tells us that the rate of suicide is still very high. And we are receiving more cases of suicidal thoughts in the place or in the facility where we are working. So it is still really a challenge.
Is that your end of comment, or there's network issue? Taban, looks like we have lost you. Oh, okay. When you bounce back, we'll definitely give back the chance to you.
But it is our collective responsibility. So it is really a very good session. We really benefited, and we need to carry on the knowledge in order to support our communities. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Leju, are you back? No, he's not yet back. So so I see in the chat box there's
Bida,
Yeah,
let me request you to excuse me a little bit. I might be leaving the group shortly because of other commitments. And
okay.
as we wait for Leju to come back, I remember
He has actually come. He has come.
Yeah. I remembered attending one of the sessions last year, and I requested for a contribution or an expansion of the same program into the local communities by reaching out to the grassroots. Because one, we are doing this exercise online and on the internet. Yet the internet penetration in the country is very limited, and affordability is also another problem that is affecting people from accessing the content that we are now building or dwelling on. And one, if the committee or the team that is handling such programs can help in finding modalities of expanding this project offline to reach a bigger population would help. And secondly, I am thinking of an idea of selecting, for example, if we start with Juba, we identify the counties or the Payams or whatever areas they are, and then select people within these setups who can volunteer to come attend a TOT, a training for trainers to become like the village or the Payam or the area champions to look out for such cases that are happening. From background, I personally, I can speak for myself. Leju knows me in person. I have gone through a lot, but thank God I am my own counselor. Sometimes I go through terrible situations. I sit and I use the EFT. Now, sorry for diverting from the main concern that I was presenting, but I'm just giving you a little bit of a testimony of what I went through. So if I am to list the situations that I have gone through from childhood until today, I'm very sure the members who are attending this session will be surprised how I've made it. But thank God, having a cycle that understands and stands for you, do not leave you a space to go astray is what has helped me today. And at a personal level, if there is a chance to volunteer to share the experiences that I have offline, I am available. Thank you.
Thank you, Bida. I am back. Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. I really think this was a very, very wonderful addition to what we have discussed. I also appreciate everybody's additions. And Mr. Ahmed, really, before you go offline, I think my next thing to take us through was, and still is, briefly about EFSS. Excellence Foundation for South Sudan. Okay, so I think what you have raised, I will pass it on to Bida to look at it and see if EFSS can do something about it. In yesterday's call, those who joined in time, I introduced myself as a volunteer chairperson for the board of directors for EFSS. And as EFSS, we do have a number of activities that have been scheduled to happen this year. And this is our budget, 1.4 million South Sudanese pounds, about $1,400 presently. And of course, such an idea from you, Ahmed, if the board, the executive board of EFSS can be flexible and they think it is able to be fitted in the activities for the year, at least to do within Juba as a county, I think it's not going to cost so much because if it is something within the Hilla, somebody's transport can be their feet compared to going outside of Juba, for example. And maybe that is something that can be done, but it will also require a concept note and things like that. Perhaps that can be discussed further offline. And maybe before somebody comes in and before Ahmed goes, these are some of the activities that EFSS is indulging in this year: reskilling and upskilling of youth, empowering the future, that is through career guidance and prefects board mentorship. There is the Juba Schools mini competition that will run September to October this year, and then the Girls Voice essays competition. All these activities so far require this amount of money. And this is a youth-led organization that really doesn't have a big basket. The basket is on the members' pockets. So this is how challenging things are for now. And I would like to take this opportunity also to call on anybody's support, which can be in any of these ways, maybe volunteering into one of the activities and carrying it out, or donating, or spreading the awareness about the organization and the activities we do, so that we could get, partners and maybe even donors, fundraising, and of course advocating for the EFSS. These are the accounts. They are always available to be provided, and these are the contacts for the people. So yes, Ahmed, I think thank you all so much, Amin, for sharing your few experiences. Like you said, I have understood and I've known some of them. And it's good you are mentally strong, I can say, because the emotional freedom technique, as you said, you apply it a lot and you overcome on your own, At times, it's so good. And also, I want to encourage that if you one day really feel you need to share with somebody, don't be afraid, because no, there is a saying that people who break down it's not because they are not strong, it's because they have been stronger enough, So we are human. I'm not saying that you will break down, and we don't pray for more hardships, but always it's good that we also reach out for support, because in doing so, we can also be able to support others. I think, let me leave it there, Bida. I send it back to you again.
Now, finally, let me interrupt you, Leju. Finally, as you already concluded and passing the opportunity to Vida, I just want to give it here that we are also a team that are handling media, media content creation, and we already have an online radio that is running on the internet, plus it's also running on one of the networks without internet. Like someone can dial a code and you have an opportunity to listen to the content of the radio using your airtime, if at all you have airtime, but there is also a free trial. So just to announce on behalf of the team will be available to attend to you if you choose to create awareness online and through the radio. So feel free to reach out to me. I will connect you to the team, and you guys can have talk shows. You can have even a dedicated show within the week, or two shows within the week that can help in reaching out, because majority of the people listening to the radio are actually in the States who do not have access to internet. As we talk now, we have more than 350,000 people who follow the radio. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ahmed. Bida, over to you.
Okay, perfect. Actually, I must say, Ahmed um, yeah, like he said, he has gone through a lot, and uh, being able to walk through all these things is quite inspiring, and of course thumbs up to him for being able to go through all these situations. I think this is also an inspiration to a lot of us who might be subjected to such situations later on in the future. So I was passing through and then also I would like to sincerely thank Ahmed for your support. I think Leju and I will sit down, because of course he has a health background, and he has a better understanding of the situation. We will also give contextual information based on the testimonies that were given by Taban, Benai, as well as Yeka. And then we will also, like with the awareness, especially through radios, I see that it's something very feasible, because we can partner with community radio stations in some of these locations. Some of these locations have community radio stations, so we can partner with them, and then like you said, we'll have ambassadors that will undergo a training of trainers, which Leju can do, and then after that, now these people will do the awareness to the radio, and of course we can as well do a social media campaign to raise awareness around this very crucial issue. This is something that I see very feasible, and we'll work on it in the next few weeks and months, and definitely give an update. Otherwise, thank you so much, Ahmed, again. And and also based on the help again, Leju, I must say, you probably saw the sponsored packages for the Juba Mini spelling competition, Juba meaning competition, sorry, and of course Ahmed, his company also took one of the packages and is able to support the competition. So this is something very good, and we're also getting more support coming in, and probably by September, when the competition begins, we'll have something to make it roll out successfully. And of course, it's a collective responsibility for all of us to contribute to this country in any little way we can, and of course this is our own little way of contributing and giving back. So based on the comments in the chat, Dr. Leju, I was reading earlier, uh, somebody was saying that in Juba in custom, he heard about a man who actually killed himself inside his shop in custom. And then there's a question where somebody is asking, can too much workload lead to depression or not? And then somebody says, has written a very long write up here. I think I cannot read that. And then another one is no share attendance. There's no attendance, please. Another one say a wonderful presentation. Bravo. May God bless you abundantly, Dr. Leju. Another one is saying 4 A's of stress management strategy. Another one is a wonderful addition. Of course, that is comment from you. And then attendance again. There's no attendance, please. And then somebody said, what are some mental symptoms of stress? I think this was mentioned earlier at the start of the session, probably somebody who joined late. And yeah, and then somebody is thanking you, the presenter, for today's session. And he thinks it is high time that people need to reach out to communities such that they are able to rescue the population. And somebody is asking, where is our office in Juba and duty location? So we work virtually, actually. So so we work virtually, but if you want to schedule a meeting with us, definitely we will meet. We'll meet in an office also. And another one is saying, you're such a wonderful facilitator, Dr. Leju. You made the training livelier and more comprehensive. I enjoyed every bit of what you taught. I missed yesterday, but was able to listen to it from YouTube. Thank you again, and the team. And I see someone say it was such a wonderful presentation, and I have really learned a lot from it. Thank you very much, Dr. Leju. And Peter Dada is saying it's a good mood for today's session, and thank you for your time. And Yeka is saying, yes, in EA, we had a Spirit FM and Easter are the active ones, and he intends to offer his time if the airtime is there. And there was a question that, can we identify a person who may, how can we identify someone who may likely commit suicide? This is a question from Yeka. And then he was also asking about some suggestions on mechanisms that can be used for awareness. I think that has been already addressed. We talked about radio talk shows. We talk about community meetings where we can even sit under a tree and, of course, discuss these issues. Over to you, Dr. Leju.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bida, and everybody for the warm comments and feedback. I appreciate them. Yes, the long passage written there by Kiden Gladys, I have replied to it and suggested that she puts it in a proper write-up and shares in the WhatsApp group. I've read a few of the headings. They all look good. That I think will be an addition to what I have captured. Regarding whether excessive work can cause stress, of course. That's why yesterday during my personal well-being session, I insisted that, especially if it is unemployment, you have a contract that says how many hours you are supposed to work per day and per week and per month. And if somebody ever wants you to work beyond those hours, it should be not for every day, and it should be justifiable, and it should be within your capacity to do the work, the extra work. Nobody will pin you for not doing extra. At least that should not be, okay? So there's a reason 8 hours per day has been agreed as the working hours. And even in other countries, people are discussing whether the 8 hours is really necessary, because people's concentration often goes lower by the end of half day. Like by early afternoon hours, most people no longer even concentrate and they become less productive. That is just to say that a lot of work can make your body wear down. And if it is down to, most of these people who work so hard and so much are people who definitely know they have a certain problem, most times financial. And most times they are trying to cover a financial gap that they are not able to fill by one source of income. And then when that becomes the routine and the body gets exhausted along the way, it also throws the body into sickness, into fatigue, and then your worries of the extra gap of financial needs, you want to cover also comes in. All that can altogether lead to even a psychological trauma itself. So in a nutshell, yes, too much work is not good for the body. It can also lead to breakdown. Yeka's question, what was it again?
His question was, how can we identify a person who may likely commit suicide?
Yes, sure, correct. So that one, it's not something immediate that I just pass by a village and then I start pointing and say, no, this one will commit suicide and this and that. No, it has to come with living with that person over a certain period of time, understanding the person, and maybe even knowing a little more about this person's past, maybe 1 to 2, 3 years, the few years past. What has been this person's life like? What has this person gone through? What experiences, painful experiences, could this person have gone through? And I'm talking here about people who don't abuse drugs. So you need to understand them from sources of stress and psychological trauma. That way, you will now begin to understand change of behavior and maybe other risky behavior involvements as potential signs that this person will commit suicide. So it's not a straightforward thing, and it's not pinpoint that 1, 2, 3 things somebody wants to commit suicide. No, it has to come built on a certain background of someone and somebody's lifestyle and experiences and all this. So that's what I would say in response to that. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
And then his last question was about the mechanisms for awareness.
Oh, yes, which as you said, we've answered. I have seen his request for EFSS to support him with airtime on radio. I suggest we will discuss that offline. I mean, Yeka, you should reach out to Bida and the rest of the executive team for EFSS. And then if they are any funds to support that and it's within means, maybe it can be done. But I want to encourage that all of us who have attended this session and even those who attended it last year and so on, let's try to be our own motivated champions for this movement. You know, what Ahmed suggested just requires us to, within our families and communities, to begin to be able to proactively engage, speak out, discuss. By the way, hey, what do you think about this? Now, like these cases of suicide you people have reported that I have not come across or did not hear. Like last Friday, up to now, I'm still away from Juba anyway, so I didn't hear that one of custom. So these are things, when they happen, we should not just hear about them and keep quiet. We should use those happenings to initiate discussions around the happening, the suicide, and begin to discuss with the neighbors. By the way, have you heard this? By the way, what do you think people should do differently? How can we, you know, you might find somebody who might actually also be worried and thinking or contemplating the same thing, suicide. And then your discussions might change their minds and let them see life differently. That's what I would add. Thank you. Bina, over. I see Taban Benai's hand is up. Go ahead, Taban.
Yes, thank you. I would like to put some addition on the question raised by Yeka. There are some few indicators for someone who want to commit suicide. I will just tell some example. For example, last year, someone in WOW decided to tell the parents and the grandmother plus the grandfather that he wanted to go for a journey that he will not come back, and the journey will start in the WOW bridge along that river, Ju River. So the first day, the boy went and stayed since morning until evening and came back home. So he reported also to the parents that the journey failed, but it will be tomorrow. So the following day, the boy decided to go back to the bridge and then stayed from morning up to evening. Around 6:30, he called the mother that the journey is going to start now. If you want to come and witness, come and witness. If you don't want, you will get the result. And indeed, the boy threw himself from the bridge into the river and died. So I think that is the sign that someone is going to commit suicide. If people are to take it serious, that boy would have been rescued. And then there was another one also, I think in the beginning of this year, the person did an exercise that people did not realize, but was giving out the properties, that this property should be for this child, should be for this person, should be for this person, has distributed all the belongings away because he is going for a journey that he will not come back. And 2 weeks later, the person committed suicide. So I think those are some of the few signs. If you see somebody telling people that he's going for a journey that is not coming back, dividing the properties and the belongings, and then also telling that maybe my life is not important, very soon I will leave you people, so I've stayed in this world enough. These are some of the signs that we can identify that this person has suicidal thoughts. So these are some of the few additions I can make. So Yeka, I hope I've given you some tips. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taban Benai, for that addition. Of course, excellent and very true. These are things like, I mean, the ideation, the planning, suicidal ideation and planning. Those are really the things, the examples Taban has shared. And yes, they can happen. They can be a way to tell. And they are the most common ways we can tell. For somebody who never speaks their intention out, trust me, you will not know that they want to commit suicide, and you are just taken by surprise. Or if you now find them trying to do the act, you know. So the ideation, the planning can be stages when we can be able to identify and maybe support, or even at the time of attempting. However, again, these are things that come with the time of living with the person. you know, so it has to come with that time of living with the person, like the examples he has given, a son who lives with the parents and keeps warning the parents, and then the other person who starts, you know, we don't just give out property just like that. Maybe if we are in our deathbed, we are writing our will, and then we start issuing out portions of our wealth and other property, you know. So yes, thank you, Mr. Taban, for that. I have seen a question from Peter Data, that is psychotic different from stress, self-esteem, and depression? When psychotic is just a description, you are describing somebody to have a condition called psychosis. If somebody has psychosis, we say they are psychotic. Again, psychosis is just loss of touch with the reality. Like somebody's mind now is out of the reality. People can say they are the president of South Sudan, and yet they are not Salva Kiir. So this is being out of touch with the reality. We can say somebody is psychotic because they are experiencing psychosis, as compared to stress or self-esteem and depression. I hope I've answered you, Mr. Data. Bida, we are about 5 minutes to the top of the hour. I have another meeting I would want to jump onto. I think if we have no more serious comments or questions, we can